Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Planning and Community Development Committee for Thursday, April 9th, 2020. I'd like to call us to order, and I'd like to take a moment to recognize that while our boardroom is on the traditional territory of the Shelton First Nation, we are meeting from within the territory of the Shelton and Squamish First Nations because we're here by Zoom from all over the coast. So thank you everyone for being here today. And could I have a motion to adopt the agenda, unless anybody has anything to add? Director Kroll, moving. Seconder, Director McMahon, all those in favor? Thank you very much, that's carried. Can I also have a motion to receive all reports and communications now? Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Thank you very much. So moving on to Annex A, General Manager, Planning and Community Development. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Toth. So every quarter, the Planning and Community Development Department presents a report that includes some statistical performance from the last 3 months, as well as a few highlights. And as well included in this quarter's report is a summary of departmental impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. And staff are pleased to answer any questions that the directors might have on the report. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Director Seegers.
Sorry, too many mice here. Okay. In the report on page 1, it says that based on recent ministerial orders, public hearings are not able to be held electronically or virtually. I know that we got some additional correspondence from the ministry in interpreting the orders that they put in place, the temporary orders they put in place around electronic meetings. One of the points in that was that so long as the public has an opportunity to provide their input, it can be written. So they could drop off letters, they could email, they could, do all kinds of other measures, as long as that's in place. My understanding of this, and I'd request staff look into it further, but that we can still have public hearings. We just need to be judicial about looking at which ones need to move forward and which ones don't. So I turn that over to staff.
Thank you for the comment and the question, Director. Staff have information from the ministry and from legal sources, including MIABC, that seems to contradict that and seems to indicate that the only way that a public hearing can be held is the conventional call everybody together into one space model, which at some scale poses a contradiction with the health order about gatherings. But obviously, and this is the points that staff hope comes across from the report, we're looking for ways to ensure that business continues as much as it possibly can while respecting the safety of staff and the community. And so on the basis of the question, staff will look into this further. Thank you.
Director Seegers, did you have a follow-up?
Okay. No, that's good. Thank you. I mean, we are getting conflicting information, right? So yes, we need to figure out the ministry saying one thing, legal saying something else. Like, yeah.
Part of staff's, sorry, Chair, if I may continue.
Yeah, go ahead.
Part of the information that staff had received from the ministry is that, and this is a loose paraphrase, that a solution for public hearings is coming in the near term, and that dates from about a week ago. And staff are actively looking at this for the reasons just mentioned. Thank you.
Director McMahon.
Right. On page 2 of the report, there was a mention of rescheduling APCs. And I was wondering if staff are contacting APC members to find out if they're actually able to meet online. Because at least for my APC, some of them receive paper agendas.
Staff.
Thank you for the question. Yes, staff have performed a baseline assessment of the capacity of our APC members to connect by phone or by video. And on the basis of receiving a nearly unanimous positive reply. Staff are proceeding to develop tools to enable our APCs to continue to function and to work with those folks who express some concerns about technical capacity or ability to connect. And at this point, staff are optimistic that we will have a solution that works for all in place for the April round of APC meetings for those commissions that have agenda items. Thanks.
That's good news. Follow up, Director McMahon?
Yeah, that is good news. I'm very happy to hear it. But I think this is also an opportunity to rethink how we manage our volunteer committees, because meeting online is a lot more convenient, I think, for most people than having to drive to meetings at the SCRD office. And it may give us more flexibility for meeting during hours outside of strictly office hours. So I hope we take this opportunity to look and see what more we can do to be flexible. Thank you.
Opportunity to innovate. Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I saw that the Gibson's and Area Community Center had doubled its or had increased its admissions visits, and I guess that seems to come back to Sluggers being closed. But then I also saw that the Sunshine Coast Arena has just about tripled its attendance over last year, and I'm wondering what reason might that be?
Staff?
Thank you for the question. So the first comment, and I have mentioned this in previous quarterly reports, that the statistics as reported in these quarterly reports are a source of challenge for staff in terms of ensuring that the numbers that we are reporting are relevant. And so just to note that there's an improvement project underway to look at how we can improve our reporting to capture the most impactful figures, because, for example, I believe that these figures include spectators attending events, so they're door admissions to the facility. To answer the specific question, Sunshine Coast Arena staff have continued to work with our ICE user groups, and the committee will recall from meetings earlier this year, the user groups are really working to grow their programs on the basis of some improvements in scheduling. And so we're seeing the benefits of that. The timing of particular events like major tournaments and whether those tournaments are held on the coast or in another divisional facility also influences attendance at our rec facilities. But in spite of the challenges with reporting numbers consistently, staff are pleased to note that there remains strong patronage at all the rec facilities. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Director Pratt.
Thank you. I've got a few questions, so if you want to interrupt me, just mute me as you need. So first off, with the announcement of the BC Parks closure yesterday, can you give us where we're at with our local parks? And what decisions have been discussed in that way?
Go ahead, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Chair. So current status is SCRD parks as of today are open, and playgrounds within those parks and our sports fields are closed and either signed or taped off or both. And we are in the process of rolling out etiquette signs about sort of advisory signs about social distancing and hygiene behaviors. And on the announcement from BC Parks yesterday, the question of what that change means for SCRD parks in terms of potential increased load, and whether there are lessons from our peer park operators like BC Parks that we should be applying to our our parks and considering some closures or service changes was referred to the Emergency Operations Center for some analysis, and SCRD Parks is standing by to implement any changes that might result from that. And I see the CAO has his hand up.
CAO McKinley.
Yeah, and just further to Ian's comments, it's a topic area we were going to bring up through the EOC policy group meeting this afternoon and have a bit of discussion on it to see if there was some direction that was being provided from the policy group through to the EOC.
Okay. Director Pratt, do you mind if I roll through everybody else who's put their hands up in the meantime and come back to you?
Okay.
Okay. Director Kroll.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, on page 1, you mentioned refunds with respect to recreation centers. Are the refunds of a significant nature that they would impact on the budget projections?
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. I'll say yes. The user fees received for recreation are a significant portion of the recreation service budget. And so through the amendments made to the financial plan before adoption, some changes were made, but at that time, the Chief Financial Officer noted that as we learn more and as the planning horizon becomes clearer, it may become necessary, likely will become necessary, to further review the recreation budget.
We're really not going to know the full impact until we're out the other side on this. Director Kroll, did you have a follow-up, or are you good?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much, Director.
Okay. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report. And I wanted to just say congratulations to the staff who have had promotions. It's nice to see people getting new opportunities and taking on new challenges. So congratulations to those people. My question is kind of about the connection between the parks field staff and the public, and kind of to get a sense of the difficulties of doing the field work, and what changes are happening. Like, can people ride in vehicles together? What kind of steps have staff had to do in order to try to do their day-to-day operations, and how that is limiting their ability to just do what they used to do without even thinking?
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. I guess in general, all the work of SCRD Parks, all the essential work of SCRD Parks continues, and staff have found a way to get that done. To my knowledge, the biggest challenge for Parks was being efficient about work at Dakota Ridge as we concluded the season there, since there's more travel involved of a specialized nature. But for getting to our sports fields to manage the upkeep there and conduct our other inspections and maintenance, staff are traveling in separate vehicles, but finding efficient routes and ensuring that they're moving supplies in a way that minimizes vehicle kilometers traveled and the fuel required.
I guess as a follow-up to that, are staff primarily using their own vehicles at this time if they are traveling separately?
No, Chair. I believe we're still able to meet the service demand using our fleet vehicles.
Okay, thank you. Director Hiltz, are you good? Okay. Director Lee.
Yes, a follow-up to the other one. Have we instituted a start from home for the people that are close to home, or are we still going with the compound type work process?
Thank you for the question. The process that's been undertaken across the entire organization is to look at what work can be performed remotely and look at the most efficient and effective ways to promote distancing while getting the work done. And so for some team members, and that would include members of the parks team, that might mean that they are starting from home or performing some of their duties at home and only traveling to the works yard when they need to pick up equipment or file paperwork, etc., that can only be done in person. Thanks.
Director Lee, follow up.
Actually, that was part of the discussion that sidetracked me. I was wondering if there's a line on consultation with the Pender Harbor Living Heritage Society regarding a lake access trail at Hotel Lake Park. I kind of would like to see that continue, and I was wondering if it would be possible, or if it was in the work plans, or it was too early to give a status on that one.
That's on page 11, correct?
Yes.
Staff?
I'm sorry, Chair. I don't have a detailed update other than I do know that our park superintendent has continued dialogue with the society, and I believe that's been completed virtually to connect to the last question, but that the project continues and hasn't been impacted specifically by changes to how we're delivering service.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Yeah, just briefly, I look forward to our discussion about parks at the policy meeting this afternoon. The playgrounds are well marked. I really, I've looked at several of them, and the signage is very clear. Much less so the school board playgrounds could use a similar treatment, because they just hung up a few like signs in plastic sleeves that, you know, blow around or fall down or get wet, and so that's their problem. And I just wanted to say that I was down at Somes Beach yesterday, and boy, that access trail is really improved. Great job. Thanks very much.
Director Pratt.
Thank you. So just to go back to a few things, I also wanted to offer congratulations to staff for promotions, and it's great to have those growth opportunities within our organization, and be able to keep our planning staff within our organization. I'll just leave that there. And just wanted to offer some thank yous. I've seen a lot of really positive comments on the lights around Cooper's Green and the work that was done around there. So thank you. And a lot of kudos for, I'm seeing a lot of working together. We're all in this together approach, which is fantastic to have that team approach. One of the things I was going to say, I know one of the items that fell off with the COVID situation was the joint use elected meeting, and being that we've become so proficient with Zoom, I would like to suggest that maybe that goes back onto the calendar with the joint use agreement with the school district, and we maybe can reschedule that meeting, because I think it's been postponed in our calendar, and it would be good to have that conversation again. And then a specific question that I had on page 4 on the development applications, I noticed that the application under the statistics at the top of the page, we're down about 25% in applications, yet we're about the same amount for revenue. And if you could just if the GM could just comment on why that might be. It seems odd to be down that much in applications, yet actually over the same amount for Q1 versus Q1. And I'm just wondering if that's a typo or if it was a fee change that I didn't notice. So thanks.
GM Hull.
Thank you for the question, Chair. Those fees are based on the value of development. If I may, I'll defer to Manager Dave Patey for any additional detail he might be able to offer.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. At this point, I can't answer the question because I would need to look into it further and find out where the discrepancy lies in terms of fees and number of applications. Thank you.
I think GM Hall touched on it there, where the value of the construction has gone up, so therefore the value of the fees has gone up. Was that it, Director Pratt? Okay, Director Seegers.
Thank you. Given that most of the developers or people doing building, et cetera, typically come in to the regional district and meet with staff, have they adapted and have staff adapted to working remotely? And have we seen, I know we probably initially saw volume drop off. Has that picked back up, or things kind of sorting themselves out there?
Not sure who wants to take that.
I can take that question. Thank you, Chair. Developers and applicants seem to have adapted really well to our to submitting email applications, as well as having the ability to call staff directly. And our staff has been very diligent on answering questions and emails on a daily basis that come in through our planning inbox, and responding on a one-on-one basis with applicants. And so far, I don't think there's been any issues that have arisen out of the process. Thank you.
Great. Director Seegers, did you have a follow-up?
No, that's great. That's good to hear.
Director McMahon.
Yeah, I just had two more quick questions. One is about Ocean Beach Esplanade. I've had a number of people express some concern about, the amount of assembling down there, and could we put up some signage? And the second thing that I wanted to ask about was where we are with short-term rentals. It may be a moot point at this junction, as I don't think we're going to have a normal tourist season this summer, but I'm still getting inquiries about where we stand in the short-term rentals process, bylaw review.
Staff?
I can answer the first part, and then I might leave it to Dave Patey to pick up the second. On Ocean Beach Esplanade, signage for Chester Park and for the beach accesses that are managed by SCRD is contemplated, and it's in the works right now. The portion in between is not SCRD jurisdiction, and so we might seek to coordinate with the Ministry of Transportation, but ultimately it would be up to them to allow or agree or put up their own signs as they prefer. And on short-term rentals, Dave, if you could address the question, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Short-term rentals, I understand, is subject to a public hearing, which I was booked for the 21st. And I understand until we have further information about how we may be able to proceed with public hearings, that process is on hold, and until we see further direction from the board. Thank you.
The public can still submit comments and concerns into staff, though, regarding short-term rentals in the interim, though, correct?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Director Ties, I had seen your hand go up. Did you have a question, or?
Oh, I just wanted to mention that I'd like to bring up short-term rentals this afternoon at the policy group meeting. So, but we'll leave that at that time.
Perfect. Anything further about Annex A from anybody? Director Hiltz.
Thanks. Yeah, it's on page 17. It's about the MyPass. Just whether the discontinuation is related to the COVID or it was contemplated from before.
Steph?
Thanks for the question. It was contemplated before. People visiting the community or otherwise, I don't know, life circumstances looking for more flexible options. And so in response to that and seeing an opportunity to grow revenues, staff were already making that change when some other changes happened. Thanks.
Thank you for that. All right. Seeing no more hands, moving on to Annex B. BCTS Operating Plan 2020 to 2024. Ms. Clark.
Thank you, Chair. BCTS is a provincial corporation that is responsible for approximately 20% of BC's annual allowable cut, and it operates under the legislative and regulatory frameworks of the Provincial Forest Act, the Forest and Range Practices Act, the Wildfire Act, BCTS Regulation, and the Wildfire Regulation. Each year, BCTS opens their 5-year operating plan or harvesting plan for comment. Referrals are sent to the SCRD as well as many other agencies. SCRD staff provide a technical review, which is focused on where SCRD services could be impacted, such as parks, trails, water supply, or official community plan policies. A staff report is presented to SCRD committee, as we're doing today, and then to the board, as well as referred to SCRD advisory committees. Recommendations are forwarded as a package to BCTS for consideration. This year's operating plan review focuses on the proposed blocks that are closest to our communities. The focus of this report is on the proposed cut blocks in electorals E and D in particular, and the impact that harvesting could have on recharge areas for groundwater drinking water supply, as well as the downstream stormwater management implications. In addition, there are some potential trail impacts to Suncoaster Phase 1 near Half Moon Bay, and also to Suncoaster Phase 2 downstream of the proposed blocks on Mount Elphinstone. Thank you, and staff are willing to take your questions.
Of which I'm sure there will be many today. Director Ties, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, first of all, thank you to staff. I think those are some really good recommendations that have been put together. I did get an email this morning from Elphinstone Logging Focus, and they have given us an itemized list. I forwarded it to everybody. I wouldn't mind kind of discussing through that, especially the blocks TA 0526 within the Chapman Creek drinking watershed. So that one I think we should probably single out, as well as all those blocks that are in our proposed OCP or in the proposed Elphinstone Park that's in our Roberts Creek OCP. But I think all the items in that email are probably worth discussing. So I'll leave that up to the chair as to how you want to handle that.
I was just going to say, before we discuss anything in that, we should probably receive that communications. Somebody like to move that? Moved, seconded, all in favor?
No. I'm against.
Okay.
I'm against. And I call it as it's a very complicated document that we got just before this meeting started. Staff hasn't had a chance to review it. And as directors, we haven't had a chance to review it. There are a lot of points in here that are speaking specifically. We've had an opportunity to go through the rest of the agenda and look at everything else. But these are a number of points that are coming up last minute. So I do not support bringing this forward. And I understand everybody's already voted on it, but I just need to say my piece there.
Nope, that's fair. What is our deadline for getting back to BCTS on this? Anybody?
Thank you for the question. According to the communications protocol in our 90-day window, April the 24th is our due date.
Okay. Director Ties, did you have anything further you wanted to say?
Yeah, well, I think that there's some good points raised in this document. I think it's worth discussing them. I know it's very short notice. I'm wondering if there's any way that maybe we can get staff to give comment on this before we take it to board at the next board meeting. Is that a reasonable suggestion?
Staff?
Thank you for the question, Chair. Staff would certainly appreciate that approach versus offering comments today on the basis of having just received new information this morning, and could endeavor to perform what analysis we can in the time before the board meeting. Yes, thank you.
I would suggest that, yeah, it is a highly technical document, and they are technical in their email communications that was forwarded to us. It is probably sort of in the weeds for us to be getting too specific on that, but I just wanted to receive the communication so that it was on the table as Director Ties raised points out of it. Director McMahon?
Yeah, I have a lot of different things to say. I agree, by the way, about receiving the communication, especially since I don't think our recording secretary has received it. So that's a problem. I really appreciate staff's report. I think it represents a new approach to BCTS and emphasizes the need to address our natural assets broadly and cross-jurisdictionally rather than a piecemeal approach. It also identifies that BCTS's mandate is cutting. It's not sustaining our ecosystems or our communities. And we have a lot of issues that lie outside of their responsibilities. In fact, on the coast, when it comes to water, we have a situation with many overlapping jurisdictions where everybody seems to have a role, and then we have other areas where nobody seems to have any role, and it's creating a whole lot of trouble for us. While a regional growth strategy will start to address some of the issues here, we clearly need the province to change their approach, because ministries are operating in silos where they don't talk to each other, and they're making decisions about properties or infrastructure in complete ignorance of what another ministry may be doing just down the road. I'm also wondering if we should revisit our communications protocol with BC Timber Sales. One of the things it doesn't address is who's communicating. And it appears right now that it's staff to staff. As the board, we have not had any meetings with BC Timber Sales since we were elected. So, you know, where's our role in here? And there's nothing really in it around public consultation. For instance, the current plan has an area of enhanced public engagement, but we don't actually have a definition of what enhanced public engagement is. So I'm wondering if staff thinks that it is worth taking another look at the communications protocol.
Staff?
Thank you for the question, Chair. Staff hear the director's concerns, and I guess in answering the question, I'm challenged to differentiate the good things that come out of having a communications protocol, which provides consistent relatively timely information on which an assessment of service level impacts for SCRD can be made, which, as I understand it, was an improvement over the prior approach pre-protocol, and whether that, because of those good things, whether additional tools are needed, or whether, like in addition to the communication protocol, or whether changes to the protocol are needed. So I guess it's a question of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I wouldn't want to see SCRD go backwards in terms of the information that the level of information we are at least getting now from BC Timber Sales, which, speaking as part of the team that we all are managing our services, this is helpful, and we seem to be in a better position than some other regional districts in that regard. But that's not to dispute that there aren't other things, other approaches like public clarity on public participation that would be helpful to our relationship with BC Timber Sales and of benefit to the community and strengthen what happens through the protocol. And I guess on that, there are a number of enhancements to the relationship that are discussed in a kind of a technical way in this report, seeking some dialogue and maybe some forward movement on some landscape level things, some cumulative impact assessment things that could add credence to the work that happens through the protocol. Thank you for letting me share a few thoughts beyond probably just the answer to the question. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Director Lee.
Yes, I really appreciated GM Hall's comments. My concern was that the communications protocol seems to be an awful good foundation. We could use some clarity on existing process, maybe to strengthen what is there. But my thoughts are that there's BCTS manages 20% of the total cut in the province, and the other 80% is already quota that's been given out to other companies. And in fact, we would do ourselves a favor by trying to get that the chief forester to include that 80% plans in the same communications protocol we already have, with the 20% that goes to public auction. So that's my thoughts on the matter. Oh, and one more thing. On page 22, it says that BCTS is continuing to work collaboratively, anyways, working with us. And on C, it says BCTS is implementing public safety measures and communicating activities. Is the SCRD involved in that as well? In other words, do we ensure that it's done and we understand what's being done? That's my question there on that one.
I think in that recommendation, it's just a request, but I'll see if GM Hall or anybody else wants to weigh in on that.
Thank you for the question. It is framed as I guess as direction or request forward looking. The relationship around trails has been fairly constructive, and staff are plugged in both with impacts to our trails, where our parks team is working actively with forest licensees to confirm what impacts there will be, confirm a signage plan, and we typically are posting information on our website. And for other trails for which a community group holds an authorization, SCRD coordinates, and we sometimes share mapping and things like that to help the Trail Society. but that relationship is more directly between the Trails Society and BC Timber Sales. But certainly we're available to support and try to coordinate where we can. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Director McMahon, my apologies. I lowered your hand. Did you have a follow-up to your earlier question, or is it a new question? Okay. Director Seegers.
Thank you. 2 points. Further to Director McMahon's comment about the protocol agreement or the communication agreement, whatever we have with them. They have, in the last probably 3 or 4 months, indicated a change in the way that they engage with the community. So they are talking about this enhanced public engagement process. We saw some of that when I attended with Director Lee up in Egmont, when the Shelton Nation and BCTS were looking to move forward with some logging up there. So they came out really early, did some community engagement. This may be an opportunity for us to engage with them at a board level with staff to say, you have changed what you're doing. We'd like to go back and revisit our communications protocol with you to see if there's anything in what you are doing that could now be incorporated inside of this. Might just be a way to open the conversation with them. So leave that piece. Then the other piece is, this is a process question. We have a motion on the floor, I believe, and I'd like to hear what the motion is that's on the floor.
Staff?
Hi, the motion that I have captured so far is that the communication received from Elphinstone Logging Focus will be received, and that staff review the document and provide comment prior to the April 23rd board meeting.
Okay, so it's basically referred to staff at this point. Okay.
Director Hiltz.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm just trying to get track of the motion. So that's been passed as far as I know. So I'm just going to come back to the recommendations that are here. So
sorry, process. Oh. It was not passed. There was a. Nope. We were asked to approve it, and we raised
concerns were raised.
Concerns, yes. So it has not been voted on at this point. It is on the floor.
Okay, I'll back up then, and we'll deal with that one.
Okay. With the hands up, anybody want to speak to the motion that is on the floor? Director McMahon? Director Pratt? Director Lee?
Yes, I was a little confused, and I'd like to understand the process. I believe there was a motion to accept the to table that letter, and there was no discussion, and we took a vote of some sort, but I don't know what that vote was. And Lori interrupted it and said that she wanted to be recognized as opposing. I never did get a chance to discuss or put up my hand, so I'm kind of confused as to exactly where we are in this.
I can admit fault on that. Receiving it for communications, we did not vote on that letter being accepted yet. That is the motion that's currently on the floor, as Director Seegers has queried and had brought up.
Okay, so can I speak to that then?
By all means.
The discussion around this was that it was too early to receive it and that it should be directed to staff. And if that is our decision, do we have to modify the motion to receive that, or what do we do next here?
Staff?
Hi, I believe the motion on the floor is to direct staff to provide comments for the April 23rd board meeting. Is that correct? And the question is around whether or not the letter should be received at all at this point, or simply have staff bring back comments to the board. Is that what the question is, Director Lee?
Yes.
I'm not sure in the end it's going to make a particular difference in terms of whether or not the letter is received. I think staff has direction to provide comments to the April 23rd board meeting, but I don't think that there's any harm in receiving the letter with that instruction to staff.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody else like, Director Pratt?
So just on this item, I'm happy with receiving it and sending it to staff for comment. I'm not happy to, and the reason I brought it up before as a point of order is because it had come up last minute. If we're receiving it and sending it to staff to comment on for our April 23rd board meeting, I'm fine with that, because then that makes it it can make it part of the public record for this meeting. So I'm fine with where we're at with this and the motion as Autumn, our recording secretary, read out.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything they would like to say to the current motion? No? Okay. All those in favor of the current motion? Okay, that's passed. Thank you very much. Back to our speakers list. Thank you, Director Seegers. I totally missed it. Director Hiltz.
Oh, okay. So I'm supportive of the recommendation. So I have a question about the recommendations on 4C, the public safety measures and communications. And in particular, I'm going to draw attention to the Sprott Kids Bulletin Board has a notice up there about the K2 trail being closed to industrial activity, but there's no date on it. It's an older document. So I'm wondering about, is there a best practices in how these documents are supposed to be made available? And essentially the notice that's up on Sprott Kids is an indefinite closure because there's no end date. So I'm wondering where the best practice is BCTS, and I'm not sure if the K2 trail closure was a BCTS sale. So I'm wondering, is there a best practice about how to communicate these materials?
Staff?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I'll share what I can, and my colleagues may have more to share. But I believe that best practice, and I believe this is codified into the licenses that are provided to those doing harvesting, is signage across trails posted at boundaries of cut blocks. And the regional district's practice on being advised of activity is to share that with our Trail Society colleagues, and also to post information on our website if it relates to one of our trails. And I would suggest that there's improving coordination with trail groups on the coast, such that even trails that are not within a specific area, such as the trail that the director is mentioning, which is not in Sprockets, but might be accessed through there, that there might be coordination to leverage any trailhead kiosks, regardless of whose they are, to provide better, more complete information to the community. Thanks.
Muted myself. Thank you for that. Did anybody else on staff have anything to add to that? Or no? Perfect. Director Hiltz, does that answer your question? Okay. Director McMahon.
Thank you. One of the areas of confusion in the community is around when is a watershed a watershed? And on page 27, the report notes that if a geographic watershed is not a community watershed as defined in FERPA, then it's not a watershed. So if staff could provide a little clarity about that, like what watersheds do we have? There are a number of old watershed tenures that are still shown as active when you go into the mapping system, but they are apparently not recognized. So what actual real watersheds do we have that are recognized?
Just a short question, right? Staff? Go ahead, Julie.
Remco might jump in and assist me here. But your primary example would be Chapman Watershed, and based on FERPA, the Forest and Range Practices Act, community watershed is a drinking watershed as indicated by an intake to a community drinking water supply. So the Chapman Water Treatment Plant and the intake associated with that is the indicator. Can you add to that, Remco? There are other community watersheds as well for the Sunshine Coast, but Chapman would be the easiest example to draw your attention to.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think watershed is actually, the definition of a watershed is more a technical hydrological definition. It's a catchment area where all the water, every drop of water that falls within that area confers to one point where it's, or several points where it's flowing into a larger water system, or in this case, in our case, the CDC. So that's a more technical definition of a watershed. But and the definition of community watershed is indeed the part of the technical watershed that is about the intake of a community water supply and recognized in FERPA.
Thank you. Director McMahon, did you have a follow-up?
I have lots of questions, but I'm willing to take turns.
Thank you. I'm not lowering hands until I know that people are done with their follow-ups. So, Director Pratt.
Thank you. I'm on page 22, number 3. I'm wondering if we should also include Ministry of Transportation in this, based on the amount of advocacy and communication we've had with Modi around stormwater management, and also maybe to force the province to get out of their silos in some areas. We had a meeting, a while ago with regarding stormwater management with Modi. It's very obvious that all of these intersect, and I'm just wondering if we should just actually address it right in the motion as well.
Did anybody want to speak to that? Would it be of value to try and drag Modi to the table?
Chair, from staff's perspective, having anybody who's involved with stormwater management part of the process only strengthens the recommendation. Thank you.
Director Pratt?
Well, then I'd like to make that as an amendment to add Modi into the motion, so that it's, so number 3 states jointly, so SCRD is seeking to initiate a process jointly with the Ministry of Flynn-Rord and Modi, and maybe say funded by the province to complete a stormwater management plan at the watershed scale for Mount Elphinstone.
Okay. The good news is that none of these have been moved yet, so you don't need to make an amendment.
Thank you. Thank you for that process clarification, but that's what my suggestion would be on that.
Alternate text for number 3?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Director McMahon?
Yeah, I was about to raise exactly the same point as Director Pratt, because Modi not only has a role in stormwater management in regards to infrastructure, but they are approving developments that involve extensive logging, which causes flooding, but also they're approving developments with wells. So that gets into the whole issue of the aquifer watershed management. So I completely agree with her on that one. My other question is there any long-term monitoring because in my experience, once the cut block's being logged, everybody walks away and there is no follow-up to see what happens next or what the impacts are, 2 years hence, 5 years hence, or 10 years hence. So is anybody at all measuring impacts?
Just before we go to staff, my understanding is that they have a period of time in which they do need to manage the cut block after cutting, and when the trees reach a certain maturity, is then left free to grow. But perhaps staff have a better answer to that. Julie?
Thank you for the question. I will need to double check to get you the technical details on this, because impacts is a very broad set of circumstances. My understanding is that any forest licensee is responsible to the blocks that they harvest, and those blocks only, not outside of those blocks, and that they are responsible for some level of monitoring according to the values that are in their forest stewardship plan. What those are, how often they're monitored, I don't have right here with me.
Follow up.
As just one example, one of the trails locally that it was logged, and when they finished the logging, they restored the trail, and then that winter, of course, trees started blowing down. So now it's almost impossible to get to that trail because of huge piles of blowdown that have accumulated over the last 3 years or so. So the trail really hasn't been remediated. So I take it there is no responsibility past a certain date.
I think staff will have to come back to us with further information on that. Yeah. Director Seegers.
Thank you. So we've received a correspondence from ELF and referred that to staff for comment. Do we want to, at this point, take the recommendations that are here and do something with them, or do we want to defer with this whole report until we get those comments back? Or would those be additions to what is here? So I'm just looking at how we should proceed at this point.
That was my question too, but I didn't get a chance to raise my own hand. Did staff want to comment on that? Would you prefer us defer the whole thing until the 23rd, or can any further feedback through the ELF letter come as additional recommendations?
Thank you for the question, Chair. Staff's two comments would be that that a resolution today on the recommendations, if the committee is comfortable with that, provides time for that sober second thought process, which is why things come to committee before board, and that ELF's comments and proposed items for consideration were additive and additional, and did not, on a quick review, appear to contradict any of the recommendations that were presented here. And but of course, the decision about how to proceed is with the committee. Thank you.
Of course. And at board, we can also modify the recommendations at that time. Director Seegers, did you have a follow-up to that?
No, that's good. I think we know where to go with this now then.
Okay, Director Lee.
I like what the recommendations are and the way we're going forward. My question was, should we be limiting these to just Mount Elphinstone, or should we be including the logging that is occurring in other watersheds under this plan? I'm specifically thinking about the South Pender. There's a cut block at the top of that. And there's also one in Egmont over, I believe it's North Lake Watershed. So is it time to talk about it as a package, or focus on Mount Elphinstone and use that as a model for going forward.
Staff, please.
Thank you for the question, and my colleagues may have additional points, but I would note that some of the recommendations do look at the entire BC Timber Sales operating area, and others are specific to Mount Elphinstone where they interact with specific SCRD service areas, including but not limited to the Chapman watershed. Thanks.
Director Lee, did you have a follow-up, or are you okay?
I was just reading them again. I'll put my hand down. If I have any more comments, I'll come back.
Okay. Director McMahon.
Sure, I have lots more to say, but I see no reason not to move the recommendations provided by staff with the addition of the reference to MOTI under
number 3.
Number 3.
Okay, so you're moving those? Okay, seconded. Further comments?
I do. I'm wondering what our next steps are as a board, because there is clearly an advocacy piece here. Staff are pointing us in a direction where we need more inter-ministry collaboration. And I believe we feel that we need some changes to policy as well. So how are we going to take that forward to the next step? Maybe that's a Dean question.
That does sound like a Dean question, doesn't it?
I can give that some thought, Director McMahon, and thank you for the question. I think there is some stuff to think about there.
AVICC is not happening. It would appear, but certainly UBCM might be an opportunity too, right? Director Ties?
Yeah, I would also like to, I agree with what Director McMahon said, and then I'd also like to say that it would be great to have the input of the Shelton First Nation on all this, and I was hoping that Chief Warren Paul or a representative would be here today, but yeah, I think it'd be good to sort of get the Shelton Nation's perspective on all this as well.
Consultation with the Shelton and Squamish Nations is part of their operations and is in fact recommendation 5 on here. But Director Seegers, did you want to speak to that specifically? Okay.
Yes, please. I actually had a conversation last night with Chief Warren Paul, and he indicated that as of next week, he will be at our meetings. So he's given this COVID-19 and the whole change in processes that they've been dealing with, he wanted to be here today, and they just had some additional stuff they had to get through. But he's told his staff that starting next Thursday, he's coming to our meetings. So we'll see him next week.
Excellent news. Director Lee.
I'll start by saying I'm in favor of the recommendations as the way they are now. I'm a little concerned when we make a statement like no logging in the watershed. That's to me, that's not a practical statement. There's logging in watersheds in every major municipality, including Vancouver. We have to make sure that there's zero chance of harm is what we need to do. The whole coast is a watershed. Every mountain is a watershed, and our residents are using it for potable water, whether it's a private well or in our case a community water system. So I'd like to make sure that we are focusing on zero harm to the water rather than
Thank you, Director Lee. Director Seegers, you had your hand up before. No? Okay. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'm just going to comment that I am concerned too about the economics of all this, because we keep being told that the province is earning big revenues from logging. But if they are also then turning around and having to pay a lot of money to fix Lower Road because it washed out, it seems to me that you know you're not netting a whole lot of money, and that the province needs to be taking a serious look at that. There's you know, another issue is that nobody at this time is responsible for damages to properties resulting from water diversion, ground disturbance, etc. And the property owners are without any legal recourse. So we need to find a way to address that and to get more responsibility attached to these activities. So I think that's pretty much everything that I've got to say on this, except that again, I'm really happy with this staff report, and I hope we can take some very proactive advocacy steps along this road.
All right. Thank you, Director McMahon. Seeing no more hands up, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the recommendations? Thank you. Any opposed? Perfect. That's passed. Moving on to communications. Thank you, Remco, for having joined us. Is there anything in the communications that anybody wants to discuss specifically? Director Pratt?
I'm just going to say I'd like to receive the communications because we only received the reports earlier.
Nope, I asked for reports and communications.
Okay, my apologies then.
It's all good. Director Lee?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm just switching brains here to a different subject. I note the letters from Farah on pages, well, Annex C, I believe it is. And I'd like to note that they, I believe they're very, very well written and very reasonable. And I didn't get a chance to ask for an update on a comment on the very first staff report, which was staff are working with the provincial ministries to clarify the SCRD role in these projects. And I was wondering if there was anything specific that could be said about the letter from Farah on the dual language signs, and specifically my concern that we really didn't get a chance to consult on it at all. So
I see the CAO's unmuted himself. Go ahead, Dean.
Yes, thank you for the question. I was able to reach Elena Farmer yesterday, late in the day, to have a bit of a discussion about that, and talk to her about it's the second time I've had an opportunity to talk with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, but we had a discussion about the feeling of a lot of areas across the Sunshine Coast that felt that we didn't have a good opportunity to provide meaningful feedback to their letter that they sent in January. That it unfortunately created situations where, especially with the two parallel processes being run by different agencies, the dual language signs and the potential renaming of areas, that people were lumping those things together. And while they may have sent the letter out in January asking for feedback, they had indicated late spring, early summer for the potential for these signs to be installed. And the next thing we knew, before we could provide any comment back, we were told that the signs were already being built and were on their way. And it also didn't provide us much of an opportunity to coordinate any kind of joint celebration of the dual language signs in terms of an opening event. And what I was told was that that certainly wasn't the intention of Modi, that they were tasked with implementing the dual language signs as part of the foundation agreement, that the tasks they were given included that outreach letter. And what ended up happening, as it was explained to me late yesterday, was they ended up being able to get the signs made and installed faster than they had planned. And based on the comments that they had received at that point, they wanted to take advantage of the fact that they could move on the dual language signs because they have so many other projects that they're also trying to do. And it wasn't, there was no intention to cause angst through that. And I don't think it occurred to them that there was angst being caused by also the parallel process run by a different ministry. I suggested that potentially what I might do is send her an email that has a few questions in it and points of clarification that she might be able to provide that I can share back with the group and with Farah as well. And she seemed willing to provide that clarification. And so that's the update I have at this point.
Thank you very much. Director Lee, did you want to follow up on any of that?
I think that what our CAO is suggesting is a good way to proceed with this. Would we need a motion for him to do that, or can he just proceed? That's my question. If he needs a motion to do that, I'd be pleased to make a motion that occurs.
Dean, do you need a motion for that?
I don't think I do. If you're satisfied with that way of proceeding, and Director Lee, I'll also touch base with you on some of the points that we may wish to clarify.
That's fine with me. If that's the process that works, I'm good with it. Thank you.
All right, Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I wanted to speak specifically about the renaming and all that, and I wanted to clarify whether the assumptions were correct that if there was a renaming, that basically people would have to change their mailing address, change their passports, change all of that, whether that's a correct assumption. And that does create considerable burden on bureaucratically on everybody, and so I'll start with that one.
CAO McKinley.
Yes, thank you for the question. Ian may have some additional information on this, but essentially those two separate processes, and there was a lot of confusion over those two separate processes running concurrently because they seemed interwoven, but they aren't. The second renaming process is going to take several months or longer to unfold, because those are some of the areas that the province has to consider before they decide whether or not they're going to be doing place name changes. And some of the areas that you just mentioned, Director Ties, are areas that they're going to need to look at. We were provided a referral specific to, are there any technical reasons why the renaming to those names might be challenging? And that was an area that we were doing some research on, and that's around some of the special characters that are used in those names and how those characters might be able to be read properly or not by things like 911 or fire rescue. And I don't recall right now, and GM Hall may have a bit of an update on what level of analysis we did on that, or if we provided info back. But that is one where they have delayed the process on the renaming due to all the things that are going on right now. And that process will, in include more public input or more input from local governments, and will take several months to transpire.
Thank you for that. GM Hall, did you want to add on?
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of process, staff have performed the technical analysis that was invited by the provincial toponymist at the time that the initial referral came, and that information is being referred to our APCs for the areas in which the name change was proposed. With the province did commit to speaking with the committee, with the board, to answer more questions, and staff had that lined up, ready to go, just as we went into a period of business process change. And so with this extension of time in the referral, staff can now look to get that information sharing opportunity scheduled, and those types of questions about areas outside of SCRD jurisdiction, like post office and addressing, provincial addressing, might form questions that could be asked at that time. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Ties, did you have a follow-up or a new question?
No, I'll let somebody else go ahead first.
Okay, Director Hiltz.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to continue on the theme, and it's on that page 46 where they say, please don't hesitate to get in touch. So I think this is where CAO McKinley is looking at following up, and the issues that Farah had brought up were a hardship to going through this process from an economic point of view. And I would like to know what the sort of costs associated with name changes are. And I do recognize that name changes are part of a global reconciliation process that works from Australia to New Zealand to the United States to Canada to BC. So this is a part of a global reconciliation process that we're part of. And I would like to participate as a regional district to support that. But I am, the housekeeping aspects of, if there is a name change of Madeira Park, what does that mean? And where, I'm even, is there a boundary around the Madeira Park? There is no official line around Madeira Park, and the original property that was purchased in 1904 when it was a post office was 80 acres. So, there's a lot of stuff tied up in that about the name. But I've been interested in the housekeeping aspects of the practicality of driver's licenses and all this type of stuff. And I do note that in the BC geographical naming policy, post office naming is not part of their mandate. That's a federal issue. So changing the name of a post office is a federal matter, not a provincial matter, as far as I could tell from the policy document. So that's, does CAO McKinley need some kind of questions lined up, as in, is the Carla sent it to the board? So does the board need to come up with a series of questions, or do we just delegate that to CAO McKinley to take that forward?
CAO?
I think at this time, I don't feel like I need additional direction. What I anticipate will happen is when the province is ready to re-engage on and moving forward with the naming, one of the things that they had made a commitment to was to come and make a presentation directly to our board. And when we're able to get that scheduled, I think that's an opportunity for us to have a bit of a discussion with them, and that could lead to some further direction at that time.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I know that we did not at the District of Sechelt get it, so that didn't come to us at all. The also reached out to the province and requested an extension, and they've, we've got the same extension to August. And part of what we would be looking at doing is some community consultation to find out, are they okay with the name change? What are their concerns? Because that's part of the process that the community feels has been missed. So yes, the technical analysis is important, but we also need the community to be involved in this. What we have found out so far, at least what staff have informed me, is that we said, well, we've heard that the signs on the Sea to Sky Highway are different. So why do they look different here? And what they found out was that there is no standard format in BC. There isn't anything that says this is how they're done. So they kind of make it up as they go. And then final piece is, if the regional district has done the technical analysis to date, I would appreciate if that would be forwarded on to the District of Sechelt so that our staff doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. That's it. Thank you.
Do staff need any specific direction to forward that on, or will they be happy to forward that on?
Chair, staff can share that as a matter of normal business practice. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Director Ties.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to say that, yeah, so far I don't think the sort of the community involvement has been done in a optimal way. I think if you want something like that to happen, you want to educate and involve the community in this whole thing. And I think there was a bit of an opportunity missed to learn. And especially, you know, what happened before the settlers came and how many thousands of years of history there are, and what the First Nations, what this area meant to the First Nations before things were happened. So, and I think that will create a whole lot more buy-in than saying, oh, well, let's just rename it. So I think there's an opportunity for some learning here, and I think so far that's been missed. I personally would, be in favor of changing Roberts Creek to Wasam or Stalhaya. As you know, Mr. Roberts was just a guy that settled there, whereas there's thousands of years of history on both the Sechelt and the Squamish Nation side. So I think there's some opportunity there, and I think so far it's been somewhat mishandled.
Thank you for that. Director Lee.
I largely agree with Director Tease's comments, except that I think it's important for us as directors to let the consultation process take its course without us leading the discussion with our opinions. I think it's important to have a consultation that does educate, but also gives everybody opportunity to present their views, and then after that point we can form our opinions and make our recommendations. My concern with the dual language sign is just exactly that. It was a missed opportunity for everybody to be informed about the history of First Nations in the Pender Harbor area, as well as the ongoing presence in the Pender Harbor area. And without getting the consultation process, without letting it happen, you got unnecessary controversy, and it's negative instead of a healthy discussion. But even more, you denied the local residents an opportunity to take part in the project and to be proud of what they did. And we eliminated any opportunity to celebrate the modernization of our wayfinding signs. And it was not good. And it could have been so much better. I got to say that I'm very happy with Flinro and their project to rename the 3 geographical areas in our place. They're not rushing it. They're willing to describe the process for us, and they're willing to wait until the true consultation and everybody is heard, and they then are fully informed to make their decision, as well as we being fully informed to make our decision. So I think I think we have a way forward on to address the dual language signs and hopefully clarify exactly what happened so that we know how to avoid it happening again. And I kind of look forward to the renaming. It's an important conversation to have, and it appears that it's going to be done in the right manner this time. So that's my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Director Kroll.
Thank you. Just, certainly agree with what Director Ties and Director Lee were saying. I think, we're sort of seeing another example of provincial departments operating in silos, and, they have their little project, they get it done and move on to the next, and, everyone else is left picking up the pieces. I just sort of, in conjunction with what Director Seegers was saying, I just requested any of the sort of wrinkles that have been ironed out of this project going forward that also be shared with the town of Gibsons.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have anything they want to add or discuss? Director Hiltz.
Yeah, I did want to make a couple comments about the FARA letters. This was on page 44. And the interpretation of the foundation agreement, and that before anything can be implemented in the foundation agreement, the consultation will be done prior to being finalized. And my reading of the foundation agreement is I'm not finding that specific language in the foundation agreement. So there might be, as feedback to FARA, if there was a citation of a particular aspect of the agreement that they were referring to, I think that would be helpful to clarify so that we have a common knowledge about what the agreement is saying rather than interpretation of what the agreement is saying. So it's a comment that I think it might be overstretching what the involvement of the consultation process is, and it's more framed in terms of an engagement process about but consultation before to finalize decisions. I'm not seeing that in the foundation agreement. So it would be useful feedback, I think, for them to kind of clarify what aspects of the foundation agreement they're referring to in reading through the letters. Thank you.
And admittedly, it's been a while since I've reviewed the foundation agreement, but I see that Director Lee has his hand up.
Yes, I was looking for the right part in the foundation agreement, but there is a table that was to be established to discuss this prior to these things happening, and that table has not been implemented. And it is a table that talks about consulting with local governments and with local residents, and I believe that's what they're referring to, is the desire to have that table initiated rather than going through these projects without that table. What good is the table after the projects have been finished is, I believe, what that's referring to.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else have anything they want to say about any of the communications that are here? No? Great. We have no items of new business. We have no in-camera section. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Moved? Seconded? All in favor? Great. Thank you very much. I believe now we ask for questions from the voice upon high.
One moment. Chris appears to have wandered off.
My apologies, I was in 2 meetings at once. At the moment, there are yet no questions in the gallery. There is one attendee.
Okay, we'll give them a a moment to if they've got any questions. I just want to say thank you to staff for a one-page agenda for this meeting. Still took us, an hour and a half to get through it, but that's okay. Thank you. Last call for questions from the boardroom.
Just for clarity, there's a delay of about 20 seconds between your meeting and the public gallery at the moment. So there's a bit of a long delay here.
We need that waiting music. Do, 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 do.
I'm seeing no questions or activity in the public gallery, so I think that's it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. For future note, it might be worth pointing out that the gallery can ask their questions at any time during the meeting, and we'll get to them at the end of the meeting. So, all right, I guess that's it. Thank you everybody for being here. See you at the next one.